Not all fairy tales bring comfort. Some twist, loop, and open doors best left closed. Fairy Tales That Should Not Be Read is a collection of strange, whimsical, and slightly unsettling stories. They don't give easy answers. They make you think. They don't entertain. They transform. Why shouldn't they be read? Because they linger. Because they change you. Step into a world where reality bends. Listen carefully. The Tea Shop of Forgotten Flavors. What happens when life becomes a routine without feeling? Can you remember something you've long forgotten? Why are emotions not a weakness, but the essence of life? In this episode of Fairy Tales That Should Not Be Read, we invite you to the Tea Shop of Forgotten Flavors, a place where you can find more than just tea, but also the memories you've lost. Book Mr. No Real Taste is a man who follows a strict routine, drinks only black coffee without sugar, and hasn't truly felt anything in years. But one day, a mysterious scent leads him to a hidden alleyway and into a tea shop that serves not just drinks, but the taste of childhood memories, lost dreams, and paths never taken. What happens when he drinks a tea infused with his forgotten past? Can he handle the bittersweet flavour of lost love? And what does something that hasn't happened yet taste like? This philosophical fairy tale in the style of Lewis Carroll explores mindfulness, lost emotions, and the flavours of life that can easily fade into the background. Listen to the latest episode of Fairy Tales That Should Not Be Read. Stories that change your perception, even if you don't expect them to. In a quiet alley tucked between two buildings that constantly argued about which one was taller, stood the Tea Shop of Forgotten Flavors. Its window looked dusty. Its door seemed like no one had opened it for 100 years, yet if you stepped closer, you could catch a faint aroma. Something barely familiar, stirring a strange warmth in your chest. And not far away, just 2 blocks down, lived Mr. No Real Taste. He was a practical man. He drank only black coffee without sugar, wore only grey suits, and read only necessary documents. His life was as precise as a Swiss watch, which was always attached to his vest by a gold chain. Everything in his world was perfectly arranged. The same clothes, the same streets, the same routine of moving papers from one side of his desk to the other. The same polite nods to the same people he passed every day. His world was exactly as it had been last year and the year before, and he couldn't even remember a time when it had been any different. He had long forgotten the taste of his favourite childhood tea, the ice cream he used to buy in the park, or the scent of morning air after the rain. Mr. No Real Taste never paid attention to small details. He walked the same paths, ate the same meals, and ignored anything unnecessary. But this time something was different. He had no intention of taking a detour. The street was, as always, straight and predictable. But then something changed. A light, almost weightless scent caught him by the nose. Mr. No Real Taste stopped. Strange, he murmured, inhaling deeply. The scent was unexpectedly familiar. It reminded him of something lost, yet something that had never existed. Like a postcard from a place you had never been, but somehow remembered. He looked around. To his right was the usual barber who always asked if he wanted to go blonde. He didn't. To his left, the cafe where the barista always asked if he wanted syrup in his coffee. He didn't. But between them, there was an alley that had never been there before. Well, this is interesting, he muttered to himself, as there was no one else to say it to. The alley was so narrow it seemed to have squeezed itself between the buildings by accident. The letters on its walls looked old and mischievous, shifting and reforming into the Tea Shop of Forgotten Flavors. Though, if he squinted, he could swear it also said, "You're here for a reason." Mr. No Real Taste did not believe in accidents, but his feet stepped forward on their own. When he opened the door, the bell above did not ring. It sighed softly, like an old friend who had been waiting a long time. "Excuse me, do you have something ordinary?" he asked the shopkeeper, a peculiar man named Leafwhirl, who looked somewhat like a teapot, a librarian, and a little bit like the moon. "Ordinary?" Leafwhirl tilted his head, examining him. "No, we only have what you've lost." Mr. No Real Taste almost turned to leave, but then Leafwhirl placed a cup in front of him. "Try this." At the first sip, warmth spread through his chest. This was not just tea. This was something more. "What is this?" he whispered. "Your favorite tea when you were 7, Leafwhirl replied. Mr. No Real Taste froze. The taste pulled him back to quiet evenings in his grandmother's kitchen, where she poured tea into a small cup while he traced shapes on a foggy window. This can't be... And yet it is. Leafwhirl shrugged. The next cup was lemonade from the park after a long game of football, then hot cocoa, the one he used to drink under the covers while reading by flashlight. And, finally, the tea that once reminded him of love. Love that he had lost, because he always thought there would be more time. He pushed the cup away. "Enough." "Why?" Leafwhirl asked. "Because I don't want to feel this." "But it was always in you. You just stopped noticing." Mr. No Real Taste closed his eyes. He had spent his life chasing logic and efficiency, cutting away anything unnecessary, avoiding emotions because they were messy and uncontrollable. But now, as the forgotten tastes returned, he realized he hadn't been living. He had simply been filling days, like empty cups. "What do I do now?" "Drink more, or leave as you were." He lifted the final cup. It was strange. Not transparent, not ceramic, not porcelain. It looked as though it was made from pure anticipation. "What is this?" he asked, though his voice was softer now. "The taste of what you have yet to discover," Leafwhirl replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Mr. No Real Taste leaned over the cup and inhaled. But there was no scent. Imagine the aroma of a journey you haven't taken yet, the flavour of a meeting that hasn't happened, the feeling of the first snowfall when you don't yet know if it's cold or warm. The tea shifted colours in ways he couldn't describe. He took a sip and instantly felt, if this taste could be explained, it would be like an open window on a spring morning when the city is still asleep but the day is already beginning. Or like the first step on a warm wooden floor in a place you've never been, but which already feels like home. He did not recognise this taste, but he didn't need to, because for the first time in a very long time, he set the cup down. "What now?" he asked. Leafwhirl simply shrugged. "Now, you can leave, or stay, but even if you go, this taste will stay with you." Mr. No Real Taste nodded. He didn't know where he would go next, but for the first time in a very long time, that didn't scare him. Moral: life is more than a to-do list. It is a taste, one we might never notice again unless we stop and remember how to drink it fully.